The ocean is not merely water. It is a 4 billion-year-old memory of the stars, and tonight it is finally ready to pull you into its silent, salt-heavy embrace. The epipelagic zone extends from the surface to 200 meters deep, and it is the only layer of the ocean where sunlight penetrates with enough intensity to support photosynthesis. This is the realm of light, of color, of warmth, and it is home to more life than all the deeper zones combined. The water here is blue or green depending on the phytoplankton concentration, and it is warm, ranging from tropical heat to temperate coolness. The pressure is low, barely more than atmospheric, and the currents are strong, driven by wind and the rotation of the earth. This is the ocean you know, the ocean you swim in, the ocean that sparkles in the sunlight, but it is only the surface, only the beginning. The sunlight does not penetrate evenly. Red light is absorbed within the first 10 meters, and orange follows soon after. By 50 meters, yellow is gone, and by 100 meters, only blue and green remain, and the world becomes monochromatic, a realm of shadows and fading light. The organisms here are adapted to the light, using it for photosynthesis, for vision, for camouflage, and when the light fades, they descend or hide, waiting for the sun to return. The epipelagic is not constant. It pulses with the rhythm of day and night, with the seasons, with the storms, and the life here pulses with it. Phytoplankton are microscopic plants that drift in the surface waters, and they are the foundation of the ocean food web. These single-celled organisms, diatoms, dinoflagellates, cyanobacteria, use sunlight to photosynthesize, converting carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen, and they produce more than half of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. The phytoplankton are so abundant that they color the ocean, turning it green in nutrient-rich waters and blue in nutrient-poor waters, and they are visible from space, blooming in vast swirls and patches that shift with the currents. The phytoplankton are fragile, vulnerable to changes in temperature, light, and nutrient availability, and they bloom and crash in cycles, responding to the seasons, to upwelling events, to storms that mix the water and bring nutrients from the deep. The blooms are brief, explosive, and they feed zooplankton, which feed fish, which feed larger predators, and the energy flows up the food web, and the ocean lives because the phytoplankton photosynthesize. The phytoplankton are invisible to the naked eye, but they are everywhere, drifting, dividing, dying. And they are the reason the ocean is alive, the reason you can breathe. Zooplankton are the drifters, the animals that float in the currents, unable to swim against the flow. They range in size from microscopic protozoans to jellyfish several meters across, and they include the larvae of fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. The zooplankton feed on phytoplankton, on each other, on detritus, and they are eaten by fish, whales, and seabirds. The zooplankton are the link between the primary producers and the higher trophic levels, and they are essential to the flow of energy through the ocean. The zooplankton migrate vertically, rising to the surface at night to feed on phytoplankton and descending to deeper waters during the day to avoid predators. This migration is the largest movement of biomass on Earth, involving billions of tons of animals, and it happens every day, in every ocean, and it is driven by light, by the need to feed, by the need to hide. The zooplankton are small, translucent, and they are everywhere, drifting in the currents, feeding, reproducing, dying, and they are the foundation of the ocean's food web, the invisible multitude that sustains the visible giants. Coral reefs are built by tiny animals called polyps, which secrete calcium carbonate skeletons, and over centuries and millennia, the skeletons accumulate, forming massive structures that can be seen from space. The reefs are found in shallow, warm, clear waters, and they are the most biodiverse ecosystems in the ocean, home to thousands of species of fish, invertebrates, and algae. The reefs are not just rock, they are living, growing, and they are symbiotic, the polyps hosting zooxanthellae, photosynthetic algae that provide the polyps with food in exchange for shelter and access to sunlight. The reefs are fragile, sensitive to temperature, to pollution, to ocean acidification, and they are bleaching, dying, as the oceans warm and the chemistry changes. When the water is too warm, the polyps expel the zooxanthellae and the coral turns white, and without the algae, the polyps starve and the reef dies. The reefs are ancient, some of them thousands of years old, and they are disappearing, and the loss is not just ecological but existential, a reminder that the ocean is changing and the changes are accelerating, and the reefs cannot adapt fast enough. Seagrass meadows are underwater grasslands found in shallow coastal waters, and they are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. The seagrasses are flowering plants, not algae, and they have roots, stems, and leaves, and they photosynthesize, producing oxygen and absorbing carbon dioxide. The meadows provide habitat for fish, crustaceans, sea turtles, and dugongs, and they stabilize the sediment, preventing erosion, and they filter the water, removing pollutants and excess nutrients. The seagrass meadows are disappearing, cleared for coastal development, damaged by boat propellers, smothered by sediment from runoff, and the loss is significant because the meadows are carbon sinks, storing carbon in the sediment at rates higher than terrestrial forests. The seagrasses are quiet, unassuming, and they are essential, and they are being lost at a rate of about 2% per year, and the loss is accelerating. The meadows sway in the currents, green and dense, and they are home to countless organisms, and they are one of the ocean's most important ecosystems, and they are vanishing silently beneath the waves. The ocean surface is not flat. It is textured by waves, by ripples, by swells, and the texture is created by wind, by currents, by the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun. The waves are energy traveling through the water, and they can travel thousands of miles from where they were generated, and they carry the energy of storms, of wind, of the restless atmosphere. The waves break when they reach shallow water, when the bottom slows the base of the wave and the top continues forward, and the wave collapses, releasing its energy in a crash of foam and sound. The waves are not water moving, they are energy moving through water, and the water itself moves in circles, rising and falling as the wave passes, but not traveling with the wave. The waves are rhythmic, hypnotic, and they shape the coast, eroding cliffs, building beaches, moving sediment, and they are the pulse of the ocean, the visible manifestation of the energy that flows through the water. The waves are constant, and they are never the same, and they are the reason the ocean is never still, never silent, always moving, always changing. Dolphins are mammals, and they breathe air, and they are among the most intelligent animals in the ocean. Dolphins live in pods, social groups that hunt together, communicate with clicks and whistles, and care for their young. The dolphins are fast, agile, and they hunt fish and squid, using echolocation to find prey in murky water or at night. The echolocation is precise, and the dolphins can detect the size, shape, and distance of objects by listening to the echoes of their clicks, and they can distinguish between different species of fish, between healthy and sick individuals. The dolphins are playful, curious, and they interact with humans riding the bow waves of boats, leaping out of the water, and they seem to enjoy the interaction, though the reasons are not fully understood. The dolphins are not fish. They are warm-blooded, they nurse their young, and they are descended from land mammals that returned to the ocean millions of years ago, and they carry the legacy of that transition in their bodies, in their lungs, in their need to surface and breathe. The dolphins are graceful, and they are intelligent, and they are a reminder that the ocean is not alien, that it is home to creatures that are, in some ways, like us. Sea turtles are ancient, unchanged for millions of years, and they are found in all the world's oceans except the Arctic and Antarctic. The turtles are reptiles and they breathe air, and they spend most of their lives at sea feeding on jellyfish, seagrass and algae, and they return to land only to lay eggs. The females crawl onto beaches, dig nests in the sand, and lay dozens of eggs, and then they return to the sea, and the eggs incubate in the warmth of the sand, and the hatchlings emerge and scramble to the water, and most of them are eaten by predators before they reach the ocean. The turtles that survive can live for decades, and they migrate thousands of miles between feeding grounds and nesting beaches, navigating by the Earth's magnetic field, by the position of the sun, by cues we do not fully understand. The turtles are slow, deliberate, and they are vulnerable, threatened by fishing nets, by plastic pollution, by the loss of nesting beaches, and all 7 species are endangered or threatened. The turtles are survivors, relics of a time when reptiles ruled the earth, and they are still here, still swimming, still nesting, and they are a reminder that the ocean is old, and the life in it is ancient, and it is worth protecting. Kelp forests are underwater jungles found in cold, nutrient-rich waters, and they are dominated by giant kelp, a brown alga that can grow up to 2 feet per day and reach lengths of over 100 feet. The kelp anchors to the rocky bottom with a holdfast, and it rises through the water column, its fronds spreading at the surface, forming a dense canopy that provides habitat for fish, invertebrates, sea otters, and seals. The kelp forests are productive, photosynthesizing rapidly, and they support complex food webs, and they are nurseries for many commercially important fish species. The kelp forests are dynamic, growing and shrinking with the seasons, with the availability of nutrients, with the presence of herbivores like sea urchins, which can overgraze the kelp and create urchin barrens, barren stretches of rock where the kelp has been eaten and cannot regrow. The kelp forests are beautiful, swaying in the currents, and they are fragile, vulnerable to warming waters, to pollution, to the loss of predators like sea otters which keep the urchin populations in check. The kelp is not a plant. It is an alga, and it is one of the fastest growing organisms on Earth, and it is essential to the coastal ecosystems where it grows. The ocean absorbs about 30% of the carbon dioxide released by human activities, and this is slowing the rate of climate change. But it is also changing the chemistry of the ocean. When carbon dioxide dissolves in seawater, it forms carbonic acid, and the acid lowers the pH of the water, making it more acidic. The ocean is becoming more acidic, and the change is happening faster than at any time in the last 300 million years. And the organisms that build shells and skeletons from calcium carbonate, corals, mollusks, some plankton, are struggling because the acidic water dissolves the calcium carbonate, making it harder to build and maintain their structures. The acidification is invisible, but it is measurable, and it is accelerating, and the consequences are profound. The coral reefs are bleaching and dying. The shellfish are struggling to build their shells. The plankton that form the base of the food web are declining. The ocean is absorbing our carbon, and it is paying the price. And the price is the chemistry of the water, the foundation of the ecosystems, the ability of the ocean to support life. The acidification is silent chemical, and it is happening now, in every ocean, and it is one of the greatest threats to the ocean's future. Sunlight is the engine of the epipelagic zone, and it drives photosynthesis, warms the water, and creates the conditions for life. The sunlight penetrates the surface, and it is absorbed, scattered, and reflected, and the amount of light that reaches a given depth depends on the clarity of the water, the angle of the sun, and the presence of particles and organisms. In clear tropical waters, light can penetrate to 200 meters, but in murky coastal waters, it may penetrate only a few meters. The light is blue in the deep water, because blue light has the shortest wavelength and is scattered the least, and the world becomes monochromatic, a realm of blue shadows. The light is not constant. It changes with the time of day, with the seasons, with the weather, and the organisms respond to the changes, migrating, feeding, reproducing, and the epipelagic zone pulses with the rhythm of the light. The light is life, and without it, the ocean would be dark, cold and barren, and the life would retreat to the deep, to the vents, to the places where energy comes not from the sun, but from the earth itself. The light is the gift of the sun, and it is the reason the surface is alive, the reason the ocean is blue, the reason you can see the water and the life within it. The temperature of the surface ocean varies from below freezing in the polar regions to above 30 degrees Celsius in the tropics, and the temperature affects the density of the water, the solubility of gases, and the metabolism of organisms. Warm water is less dense than cold water, and it floats on top, creating a stratified ocean where the warm surface layer is separated from the cold deep water by a thermocline, a layer where the temperature drops rapidly with depth. The thermocline is a barrier, preventing the mixing of surface and deep water, and it is strongest in the tropics and weakest in the polar regions. The temperature is not uniform. It varies with latitude, with season, with depth, and the variations drive currents, influence weather, and shape ecosystems. The organisms in the epipelagic zone are adapted to the temperature, and they are sensitive to changes, and as the ocean warms, the organisms are shifting their ranges, moving toward the poles, and the ecosystems are changing, and the changes are accelerating. The temperature is invisible, but it is felt, and it is one of the most important factors shaping life in the ocean, and it is rising, and the rise is changing everything. Salinity is the measure of dissolved salts in seawater, and it averages about 35 parts per thousand, meaning that every kilogram of seawater contains about 35 grams of salt. The salinity affects the density of the water, the freezing point, and the osmotic pressure, and it is influenced by evaporation, precipitation, river runoff, and the melting and freezing of ice. The salinity is highest in the subtropics, where evaporation exceeds precipitation, and lowest in the polar regions and near river mouths, where fresh water dilutes the seawater. The salinity is not uniform. It varies with location, with depth, with season, and the variations create density differences that drive currents and influence the distribution of organisms. The organisms in the ocean are adapted to the salinity, and they regulate their internal salt concentration to match the surrounding water, and if the salinity changes too much, they cannot survive. The salinity is invisible, but it is tasted, and it is the reason the ocean is salty, the reason it tastes of minerals and ancient seas, and it is one of the defining characteristics of the ocean, one of the things that makes it different from fresh water, one of the things that makes it the ocean. The surface of the ocean is a boundary, a transition between the atmosphere and the ocean, and it is where gas exchange occurs, where heat is transferred, where energy enters and leaves the ocean. The surface is rough, textured by waves, and the roughness increases the surface area, enhancing the exchange of gases and heat. The surface is also a barrier, preventing the mixing of the atmosphere and the ocean, and the barrier is strongest when the water is calm and weakest when it is stormy. The surface is not static. It is constantly moving, constantly changing, and it is shaped by the wind, by the currents, by the tides, and it is the interface between two worlds, the world of air and the world of water, and it is where the two worlds meet, where they exchange, where they influence each other. The surface is the beginning, the entry point, and it is the place where the ocean reveals itself, where it shows its colour, its texture, It's life, and it is the place where you enter, where you dive, where you descend into the depths. Plankton blooms are sudden increases in the population of phytoplankton, and they occur when conditions are favorable, when nutrients are abundant, when sunlight is strong, when the water is calm. The blooms can cover thousands of square kilometers, and they are visible from space, turning the ocean green or brown or red, depending on the species of phytoplankton. The blooms are brief, lasting days or weeks, and they are followed by crashes when the nutrients are depleted, when the phytoplankton die, and the water clears. The blooms are essential to the ocean's productivity, providing food for zooplankton, which feed fish, which feed larger predators, and the energy flows up the food web, and the ocean lives because of the blooms. But some blooms are harmful, producing toxins that kill fish, shellfish, and marine mammals, and the toxins can accumulate in the food web, poisoning the animals that eat the plankton and the animals that eat those animals. The blooms are natural, but they are increasing in frequency and intensity, driven by nutrient pollution from agriculture and sewage, and the harmful blooms are a growing problem, a reminder that the ocean is changing, and the changes are not always benign. The epipelagic zone is the ocean's surface, the layer of light, of warmth, of life, and it is the most familiar, the most accessible, the most human. This is the ocean you know, the ocean you swim in, the ocean that sparkles in the sunlight, but it is only the beginning, only the surface, and beneath it the ocean descends layer by layer into darkness, into cold, into pressure, into realms that are alien, ancient, and silent. The surface is alive, but the deep is waiting, and the deep is vast, and the deep is calling. The sun sets, the light fades, the surface cools, the ocean breathes blue and patient, as it has for 4 billion years. The mesopelagic zone extends from 200 meters to 1,000 meters deep, and it is the realm of twilight, where sunlight fades to almost nothing, where the blue becomes black, and where the temperature drops and the pressure rises. This is the zone where photosynthesis is no longer possible, where the organisms must rely on food that falls from above or on each other, and where the adaptations become strange, specialized, and beautiful. The mesopelagic is not empty. It is full of life, but the life is different, adapted to the dim light, to the cold, to the scarcity, and it is a life that most humans will never see, never encounter, never understand. The light that reaches the mesopelagic is faint, barely enough to see by, and it is blue, the only color that penetrates this deep. The organisms here have large eyes, sensitive to the faintest light, and they use the light to hunt, to hide, to communicate. Some organisms produce their own light, bioluminescence, and they use it to attract prey, to confuse predators, to find mates. The mesopelagic is the zone of shadows, of half-light, of the transition from the world of the sun to the world of eternal darkness, and it is one of the least explored, least understood regions of the ocean. The oxygen minimum zone is a layer in the mesopelagic where oxygen levels are extremely low, sometimes less than 1% of surface levels, and it is created by the decomposition of organic matter that sinks from the surface. The bacteria that decompose the organic matter consume oxygen, and in regions where the water is not well mixed, the oxygen is depleted faster than it can be replenished, and the result is a zone where most organisms cannot survive. The oxygen minimum zone is expanding as the ocean warms, because warm water holds less oxygen than cold water, and the expansion is squeezing the habitat of fish and other organisms that require oxygen. The organisms that live in the oxygen minimum zone are adapted to low oxygen levels, and they have slow metabolisms, large gills, and the ability to tolerate hypoxia. Some organisms migrate vertically, spending the day in the oxygen minimum zone to avoid predators, and rising to the surface at night to feed in oxygen-rich waters. The oxygen minimum zone is invisible, but it is measurable, and it is a reminder that the ocean is not uniform, that it has layers, zones, regions where the conditions are extreme, and the life is specialized, adapted, and resilient. The deep scattering layer is a layer of organisms in the mesopelagic that reflects sonar signals, and it was discovered during World War II when naval sonar operators detected what they thought was the ocean floor, but the floor moved, rising at night and descending during the day. The deep scattering layer is composed of billions of small fish, squid, jellyfish and crustaceans, and it is the largest migration of biomass on Earth, involving more animals than live on land, and it happens every day in every ocean, driven by the need to feed and the need to avoid predators. The organisms in the deep scattering layer rise to the surface at night to feed on phytoplankton and zooplankton, and they descend to the mesopelagic during the day to hide from predators that hunt by sight. The migration is synchronized, timed to the setting and rising of the sun, and it is so massive that it affects the carbon cycle, transporting carbon from the surface to the deep, where it is sequestered for centuries or millennia. The deep scattering layer is invisible to the naked eye, but it is there, a living layer, a moving mass, and it is one of the ocean's great mysteries, one of the phenomena that reminds us how little we know about the sea. Lanternfish are small, silvery fish that are among the most abundant vertebrates on Earth, and they are the dominant members of the deep scattering layer. Lanternfish have photophores, light-producing organs on their bodies, and they use the light for camouflage, for communication, and for attracting prey. The pattern of photophores is species-specific, and the fish can recognize each other by the pattern, and they use the light to school, to mate, to coordinate their movements in the darkness. The lanternfish are small, rarely longer than 6 inches, but they are numerous, and their biomass is estimated to be greater than the biomass of all the fish caught by humans each year. The lanternfish are a key link in the ocean food web, feeding on zooplankton and being eaten by larger fish, squid, seabirds, and marine mammals. The lanternfish are fragile, and they die quickly when brought to the surface, and they are difficult to study, and much of what we know about them comes from specimens caught in nets or found in the stomachs of predators. The lanternfish are the hidden multitude, the invisible majority, and they are essential to the ocean's functioning. Bioluminescence is the production of light by living organisms, and it is common in the mesopelagic, where 90% of the organisms produce light. The light is produced by a chemical reaction, usually involving a molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase, and the reaction produces light without heat, cold light, and it is one of the most efficient light sources known. The bioluminescence is used for many purposes: to attract prey, to confuse predators, to communicate, to camouflage, and the organisms have evolved a stunning diversity of light-producing structures, from simple photophores to complex light organs with lenses, reflectors, and filters. The bioluminescence is blue or green, the colours that travel farthest in seawater, and it is brief, flashing, pulsing, and it creates a world of fleeting lights, of signals and responses, of communication in the darkness. The bioluminescence is not magic, it is chemistry, and it is one of the most beautiful adaptations in the ocean, one of the ways organisms have solved the problem of living in the dark, and it is a reminder that light does not always come from the sun, that life can create its own light, and the light can be used, controlled, and it can be beautiful. Counter-illumination is a form of camouflage used by organisms in the mesopelagic, and it involves producing light on the underside of the body to match the faint light coming from above, making the organism invisible to predators looking up from below. The light is carefully controlled, adjusted to match the intensity and colour of the downwelling light, and the organism becomes a shadow, a silhouette that blends into the background, and it is nearly impossible to see. Counter-illumination is used by fish, squid, and crustaceans, and it is one of the most sophisticated forms of camouflage in the ocean. The counter-illumination requires precise control of the light, and the organisms have photophores on their ventral surface, and they adjust the intensity of the light based on the ambient light levels. And the adjustment is continuous, automatic, and it is so effective that the organisms are nearly invisible, even to predators with excellent vision. The counter-illumination is a solution to the problem of being visible in the twilight zone, where there is just enough light to see by, and it is a reminder that camouflage is not just about color and pattern, that it can involve light, and the light can be controlled. And the control can be the difference between life and death. The mesopelagic is cold, with temperatures ranging from about 5 to 15 degrees Celsius, and the cold slows the metabolism of the organisms, reducing their energy requirements and allowing them to survive on the limited food that is available. The cold also affects the density of the water, making it denser than the warm surface water, and the density difference creates a barrier, a thermocline that prevents the mixing of surface and deep water, and the barrier is strongest in the tropics and weakest in the polar regions. The cold is not uniform. It varies with depth, with latitude, with season, and the variations create layers, zones, regions where the temperature is different, and the organisms are adapted to the temperature, and they are sensitive to changes. The cold is felt, and it is one of the defining characteristics of the mesopelagic, one of the things that makes it different from the surface, one of the things that shapes the life, the adaptations, the strategies for survival. The cold is invisible, but it is there, and it is constant, and it is one of the challenges of living in the twilight zone. Pressure increases with depth, and in the mesopelagic, the pressure ranges from about 20 to 100 atmospheres, meaning that every square centimetre of an organism's body is subjected to a force equivalent to 20 to 100 kilograms. The pressure affects the structure of proteins, the function of enzymes, and the behavior of gases, and the organisms are adapted to the pressure, with flexible bodies, pressure-resistant proteins, and the ability to regulate their internal pressure to match the surrounding water. The pressure is not felt by the organisms because their bodies are mostly water, and water is incompressible, and the pressure is the same inside and outside the body, and there is no pressure gradient, no force pushing or pulling. The pressure is invisible, but it is there, and it is one of the defining characteristics of the deep ocean, one of the things that makes it different from the surface, one of the things that makes it hostile to organisms that are not adapted to it. The pressure is constant, and it increases with depth, and it is one of the challenges of exploring the deep, one of the reasons the deep is so difficult to reach, to study, to understand. Gelatinous organisms, jellyfish, comb jellies, salps, are common in the mesopelagic, and they are well adapted to the low food availability and the low oxygen levels. The gelatinous organisms are mostly water, often more than 95%, and they have low metabolic rates, and they can survive on very little food, and they can tolerate low oxygen levels better than most other organisms. The gelatinous organisms are fragile, and they are difficult to study because they disintegrate when caught in nets, and much of what we know about them comes from observations by submersibles and remotely operated vehicles. The gelatinous organisms are not just passive drifters, they are predators, feeding on zooplankton, fish larvae, and other gelatinous organisms, and they use tentacles, mucus nets, and other structures to capture prey. The gelatinous organisms are increasing in abundance in some regions, possibly due to overfishing, which removes their predators and competitors. And the increase is changing the structure of the food web, and the consequences are not fully understood. The gelatinous organisms are transparent, delicate, and they are beautiful, and they are one of the most successful groups in the mesopelagic, one of the groups that have adapted to the conditions, and they are thriving. The mesopelagic is a zone of scarcity, where food is limited, and the organisms have evolved strategies to maximize their chances of finding food and minimizing their energy expenditure. Many organisms have large mouths and expandable stomachs, allowing them to consume prey larger than themselves, and they can survive for long periods without eating. Some organisms are ambush predators, waiting motionless for prey to come within reach, and others are active hunters, using bioluminescence to attract prey or to illuminate their surroundings. The scarcity is not uniform. It varies with location, with season, with the productivity of the surface waters, and the organisms respond to the variations, migrating, changing their behavior, adjusting their metabolism. The scarcity is one of the defining characteristics of the mesopelagic, one of the challenges of living in the twilight zone, and it has shaped the evolution of the organisms, the adaptations, the strategies, and it is a reminder that the ocean is not uniformly productive, that there are regions where food is abundant and regions where it is scarce, and the organisms must adapt or die. The mesopelagic is a carbon sink, and it plays a critical role in the global carbon cycle. The organisms in the mesopelagic feed on organic matter that sinks from the surface, and they respire, releasing carbon dioxide, and they excrete, producing fecal pellets that sink to the deep ocean, where the carbon is sequestered for centuries or millennia. The mesopelagic is also where the deep scattering layer transports carbon from the surface to the deep, and the transport is significant, and it affects the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it affects the climate. The carbon cycle in the mesopelagic is complex, involving multiple pathways, multiple organisms, and it is not fully understood, and it is changing as the ocean warms, as the chemistry changes, as the organisms respond to the changes. The mesopelagic is not just a zone of twilight, of shadows, of strange life. It is a zone of global importance, a zone that affects the climate, the carbon cycle, the functioning of the ocean. And it is a zone that we are only beginning to understand. And the understanding is critical because the ocean is changing and the changes are accelerating. The twilight zone is a transition, a boundary between the world of light and the world of darkness. And it is a zone of adaptation, of specialization, of beauty and strangeness. The organisms here are not the familiar creatures of the surface. They are adapted to the dim light, to the cold, to the pressure, to the scarcity, and they have evolved solutions that are elegant, efficient, and often bizarre. The twilight zone is vast, and it is largely unexplored, and it holds secrets, mysteries, and it is a reminder that the ocean is not just the surface, that it has depth, layers, zones, and each zone is different, and each zone is home to life that is unique, adapted, and essential. The light fades, the shadows deepen, the twilight surrenders to the dark. The ocean descends, cold and patient, into the abyss. The bathypelagic zone extends from 1,000 meters to 4,000 meters deep, and it is the realm of eternal darkness, where no sunlight penetrates, where the temperature hovers just above freezing, and where the pressure is crushing hundreds of times greater than at the surface. This is the midnight zone, the abyss, and it is the largest habitat on Earth, covering more than half of the planet's surface, and it is almost entirely unexplored. The organisms here have never seen the sun, and they never will, and they are adapted to the darkness, to the cold, to the pressure, and they are among the strangest, most alien creatures on Earth. The darkness is absolute. There is no light from above, and the only light is bioluminescence, the cold light produced by the organisms themselves, and the light is used for hunting, for defense, for communication, and it flashes and glows in the blackness, brief and fleeting. The organisms here have no need for color, and most are black or red or transparent, and they have large eyes or no eyes at all, and they navigate by smell, by touch, by the electrical fields generated by other organisms. The bathypelagic is not empty. It is full of life, but the life is sparse, scattered, and it is a life of waiting, of patience, of seizing the rare opportunities when they come. The anglerfish is one of the most iconic residents of the bathypelagic zone, and it is a master of deception. The female anglerfish has a modified dorsal fin that extends forward over the mouth, and at the tip of the fin is a bioluminescent lure, a glowing bulb that attracts prey in the darkness. The prey, drawn to the light, swims closer, and when it is within reach, the anglerfish strikes, its mouth opening wide, its teeth locking around the prey, and the meal is swallowed whole. The anglerfish does not chase. It waits, motionless, conserving energy, and the lure does the work, and the strategy is effective in a world where food is scarce and energy is. The male anglerfish is tiny, often less than a tenth the size of the female, and he has no lure, no hunting strategy. His only purpose is to find a female and mate, and when he finds one, he bites into her skin, and his body fuses with hers, and he becomes a permanent parasite, receiving nutrients from her blood and providing sperm when she is ready to reproduce. The male loses his eyes, his fins, his internal organs, and he becomes little more than a sperm-producing appendage, and the fusion is permanent, and the female can carry multiple males, fused to her body, and the strategy is bizarre, but it is effective in a world where finding a mate is difficult, and the darkness is vast. The giant squid is one of the largest invertebrates on Earth, with some individuals reaching lengths of over 40 feet, and it is a predator, hunting fish and other squid in the bathypelagic zone. The giant squid has the largest eyes of any animal, up to 10 inches in diameter, and the eyes are adapted to detect the faint bioluminescence of prey and predators in the darkness. The giant squid has 8 arms and 2 longer tentacles, and the tentacles are lined with suckers that have sharp toothed rings, and the squid uses the tentacles to capture prey, pulling it toward the mouth, where a sharp beak tears the flesh into pieces. The giant squid is elusive, and it has rarely been seen alive, and most of what we know about it comes from specimens that have washed ashore, or been caught in fishing nets, or found in the stomachs of sperm whales, which are the giant squid's primary predator. The giant squid is not a monster, it is an animal adapted to the deep, to the darkness, to the pressure, and it is one of the ocean's great mysteries, one of the creatures that reminds us how little we know about the abyss, how much remains to be discovered, and how strange and wonderful the deep ocean can be. The bathypelagic zone is cold, with temperatures ranging from 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, just above the freezing point of seawater, and the cold is constant, unchanging, and it has been this way for millions of years. The cold slows the metabolism of the organisms, reducing their energy requirements, and it allows them to survive on the limited food that is available. The cold also affects the chemistry of the water, increasing the solubility of gases and affecting the density, and the cold is one of the defining characteristics of the abyss, one of the things that makes it different from the surface, one of the things that shapes the life. The organisms in the bathypelagic are adapted to the cold, with antifreeze proteins in their blood, with slow metabolisms, with the ability to function at temperatures that would kill most surface organisms. The cold is not felt by the organisms because they have no concept of warmth, no experience of the sun, and the cold is simply the condition of their existence, the environment in which they live, and they are adapted to it and they thrive in it, and the cold is not a barrier. It is a feature, and the feature has shaped the evolution of the organisms, the adaptations, the strategies for survival. Pressure in the bathypelagic zone ranges from 100 to 400 atmospheres, and the pressure is immense, crushing, and it would kill a human instantly, compressing the lungs, collapsing the chest, forcing nitrogen into the blood. But the organisms here are adapted to the pressure, with bodies that are mostly water, with no air spaces, with proteins and enzymes that function under high pressure, and the pressure is not felt because the pressure inside the body is the same as the pressure outside, and there is no gradient, no force, no crushing. The pressure affects the behavior of gases, increasing their solubility, and it affects the structure of proteins, altering their shape and function. And the organisms have evolved pressure-adapted proteins that maintain their function under conditions that would denature the proteins of surface organisms. The pressure is invisible, but it is there, and it is one of the most extreme conditions on Earth, and it is one of the reasons the bathypelagic is so difficult to explore, so difficult to study, and it is one of the things that makes the abyss alien, hostile, and inaccessible to humans without technology. Food in the bathypelagic zone is scarce, and it comes primarily from above, from the surface, in the form of marine snow, a constant rain of dead organisms, fecal pellets, and organic debris that sinks through the water column. The marine snow is the primary source of energy for the bathypelagic, and the organisms have evolved strategies to capture it, to consume it, to extract every bit of energy from it. Some organisms are filter feeders, straining the marine snow from the water. Others are scavengers, feeding on larger pieces of debris, and others are predators, feeding on the organisms that feed on the marine snow. The marine snow sinks slowly, and much of it is consumed or decomposed before it reaches the bathypelagic. And what does reach the abyss is sparse, scattered, and the organisms must be efficient, must be able to survive on very little food for long periods. The scarcity has shaped the evolution of the organisms, and they have slow metabolisms, low energy requirements, and the ability to consume prey larger than themselves, and they can survive for months without eating. And the scarcity is one of the defining characteristics of the abyss, one of the challenges of living in the midnight zone. The gulper eel has a mouth that is larger than its body, and it can open its jaws to an enormous gape, allowing it to swallow prey much larger than itself. The gulper eel is black, with a long whip-like tail, and it has tiny eyes, and it is thought to be a passive predator, drifting in the water, with its mouth open, waiting for prey to swim into it. The gulper eel's stomach is expandable, and it can stretch to accommodate large meals, and the eel can survive for long periods without eating, digesting the meal slowly, extracting every bit of energy. The gulper eel is rarely seen, and it is poorly understood, and most of what we know about it comes from specimens caught in deep-sea trawls, and the specimens are often damaged, and the behavior, the ecology, the life history are largely unknown. The gulper eel is one of the many strange creatures of the bathypelagic, one of the organisms that has adapted to the extreme conditions. And it is a reminder that the abyss is full of life, but the life is strange, specialized, and it is adapted to conditions that are alien to us. And the adaptations are often bizarre, beautiful, and effective. Bioluminescence in the bathypelagic is different from bioluminescence in the mesopelagic. In the twilight zone, bioluminescence is used for camouflage, for counter-illumination, but in the abyss, where there is no light from above, bioluminescence is used for hunting, for defense, for communication. Some organisms use bioluminescence to attract prey, like the anglerfish with its lure. Others use it to startle predators, flashing brightly and then fleeing in the confusion. And others use it to communicate, flashing patterns that are species-specific, that convey information about identity, about readiness to mate, about territory. The bioluminescence in the bathypelagic is blue or green, the colours that travel farthest in seawater, and it is brief, flashing, pulsing, and it creates a world of signals, of responses, of communication in the absolute darkness. The bioluminescence is not magic, it is chemistry. And it is one of the most important adaptations in the abyss, one of the ways organisms have solved the problem of living in the dark. And it is a reminder that light does not always come from the sun, that light can create its own light, and the light can be used, controlled, and it can be essential for survival. The viperfish has teeth so long that they do not fit inside its mouth, and the teeth are hinged, and they fold back when the mouth is closed, and they snap forward when the mouth opens, impaling the prey. The viperfish is black, with a long eel-like body, and it has photophores along its sides, and it uses the light to attract prey or to communicate with other viperfish. The viperfish is a predator, and it hunts in the bathypelagic, feeding on fish and squid, and it migrates vertically, rising to the mesopelagic at night to feed and descending to the bathypelagic during the day. The viperfish is fast, agile, and it can strike quickly, and the teeth are effective, and the prey is impaled and swallowed, and the viperfish can consume prey nearly as large as itself. The viperfish is one of the many predators of the bathypelagic, one of the organisms that has adapted to the scarcity, to the darkness, to the cold, and it is a reminder that the abyss is not a peaceful place, that it is a place of predation, of competition, of survival, and the organisms are adapted to the challenges, and they are effective, efficient, and they are survivors. The bathypelagic is a zone of slow processes, of slow growth, of slow reproduction, of slow decomposition. The cold slows the metabolism, and the organisms grow slowly, reproduce infrequently, and live for long periods. And the decomposition of organic matter is slow, and the nutrients are recycled slowly. And the turnover is slow, and the ecosystem is stable, unchanging, and it has been this way for millions of years. The slow processes are a consequence of the cold, of the scarcity, of the pressure, and they are one of the defining characteristics of the abyss. The slow processes make the bathypelagic vulnerable to disturbance, because the organisms cannot recover quickly, cannot adapt quickly, and if the ecosystem is disrupted, the recovery is slow, and the disruption can persist for decades or centuries. The bathypelagic is not resilient in the way the surface ocean is resilient, and it is vulnerable to overfishing, to pollution, to climate change, and the vulnerability is a concern because the bathypelagic is vast and it plays a critical role in the ocean's functioning in the carbon cycle, in the regulation of the climate, and it is largely unexplored, largely unknown, and it is changing, and the changes are accelerating. The bathypelagic is a zone of extremes, of darkness, of cold, of pressure, of scarcity, and it is the largest habitat on Earth, and it is almost entirely unexplored. The organisms here are adapted to the extremes, and they are strange, beautiful, and alien, and they are a reminder that life is resilient, that it can adapt to almost any condition, that it can thrive in places that seem hostile, inhospitable, and impossible. The bathypelagic is not empty. It is full of life, but the life is sparse, scattered, and it is a life of patience, of waiting, of seizing the rare opportunities. The abyss is vast, and it is deep, and it is dark, and it is one of the last frontiers on Earth, one of the places where we have barely begun to explore, to understand, to appreciate. The abyss is calling, and it is waiting, and it holds secrets, mysteries, and wonders. And it is a reminder that the ocean is not just the surface, that it has depth, layers, zones, and each zone is different, and each zone is home to life that is unique, adapted, and essential. And the abyss is the largest, the deepest, and the darkest, and it is waiting. The darkness deepens, the cold intensifies, the pressure mounts, the ocean descends, silent and patient, into the trenches. The Hadal Zone extends from 6,000 meters to the deepest point in the ocean, nearly 11,000 meters, in the Mariana Trench, and it is named after Hades, the Greek underworld, and the name is fitting because this is the deepest, darkest, most extreme environment on Earth. The Hadal Zone is found only in ocean trenches, deep V-shaped scars in the seafloor where tectonic plates collide, and one plate is forced beneath the other, creating a chasm that descends into the Earth's crust. The trenches are rare, covering less than 2% of the ocean floor, but they are the deepest places on the planet, and they are home to life that exists under conditions that seem impossible. The pressure in the Hadal zone is crushing, exceeding 1,000 atmospheres at the deepest points, meaning that every square centimetre is subjected to a force equivalent to more than 1,000 kilograms, and the pressure would crush a human instantly, would collapse a submarine that is not specifically designed for the deep. The temperature is just above freezing, the darkness is absolute, and the food is scarce. And yet life persists, adapted to the extremes, thriving in conditions that challenge our understanding of what is possible, of what life can tolerate, of where life can exist. The Mariana Trench is the deepest place on Earth, and the deepest point, called Challenger Deep, is nearly 11,000 meters below the surface, deeper than Mount Everest is tall. The trench is located in the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Mariana Islands, and it was formed by the collision of the Pacific Plate and the Philippine Plate, and the Pacific Plate is being forced beneath the Philippine Plate, creating a deep, narrow trench that extends for more than 1,500 miles. The Mariana Trench has been visited by only a handful of people, and it remains one of the least explored places on Earth. The trench is cold, dark, and the pressure is immense, and the organisms that live there are adapted to the extremes, and they are strange, small, and resilient. The trench is not empty. It is home to amphipods, sea cucumbers, snailfish, and bacteria, and the organisms feed on organic matter that sinks from above, and they are part of a food web that is sparse, fragile, and ancient. The Mariana Trench is a window into the deep earth, a place where the crust is thin, where the mantle is close to the surface, and it is a place of geological activity, of earthquakes, of volcanic vents, and it is a reminder that the earth is dynamic, active, and it is constantly changing. Amphipods are small crustaceans related to shrimp, and they are among the most abundant organisms in the Hadal zone. The amphipods in the trenches are larger than their shallow water relatives, some reaching lengths of over 10 inches, and they are scavengers, feeding on dead organisms that sink to the bottom. The amphipods are adapted to the pressure, with flexible exoskeletons, with pressure-resistant proteins, and they are fast, agile, and they swarm over food sources, consuming them quickly, efficiently, and they are the primary recyclers in the Hadal zone. The amphipods are white or translucent, and they have large eyes, though there is no light to see by, and the eyes may be vestigial, remnants of ancestors that lived in shallower waters. The amphipods are essential to the Hadal ecosystem, breaking down organic matter, recycling nutrients, and providing food for larger predators. And they are one of the few organisms that thrive in the trenches, and they are a reminder that life is adaptable, that it can find a way to survive, to thrive, even in the most extreme conditions. And the amphipods are the proof, the living evidence, that the Hadal zone is not barren, that it is alive. Snailfish are the deepest living fish known, and they have been found at depths exceeding 8,000 meters, and they are adapted to the pressure, to the cold, to the darkness. The snailfish are small, gelatinous, and they have no scales, and their bodies are soft, flexible, and they are mostly water, and the water is incompressible, and the pressure inside the body is the same as the pressure outside, and there is no crushing, no damage. The snailfish have large heads, small eyes, and they feed on amphipods and other small invertebrates, and they are slow-moving, energy-efficient, and they are well adapted to the scarcity of food in the Hadal zone. The snailfish are pink or translucent, and they are fragile, and they disintegrate when brought to the surface, and most of what we know about them comes from observations by deep-sea cameras and submersibles. The snailfish are the apex predators of the Hadal zone, and they are a reminder that fish, vertebrates, can survive at depths that were once thought to be impossible, and the snailfish are pushing the limits, living at the edge of what is possible. and they are a testament to the resilience of life, to the power of adaptation, to the ability of organisms to colonize even the most extreme environments. The pressure in the Hadal zone affects the chemistry of the water, increasing the solubility of gases, altering the behavior of salts, and affecting the structure of proteins. The pressure compresses the water slightly, making it denser, and the density affects the buoyancy of organisms, and the organisms must adjust their internal chemistry to maintain neutral buoyancy, to avoid sinking or floating. The pressure also affects the enzymes, the proteins that catalyze biochemical reactions, and the enzymes in Hadal organisms are pressure adapted, maintaining their function under conditions that would denature the enzymes of surface organisms. The pressure is invisible, but it is there, and it is one of the most extreme conditions on Earth, and it is one of the defining characteristics of the Hadal zone, and it is one of the reasons the trenches are so difficult to explore, so difficult to study. The pressure is constant, unchanging, and it has been this way for millions of years, and the organisms are adapted to it, and they function normally, and the pressure is not a barrier. It is a feature, and the feature has shaped the evolution of the organisms, the adaptations, the biochemistry, and it is a reminder that life is flexible, that it can adapt to almost any condition, and the Hadal zone is the proof. Barophiles are organisms that thrive under high pressure, and they are found in the Hadal zone, and they include bacteria, archaea, and some eukaryotes. The barophiles are adapted to the pressure, and they require high pressure to function, and they cannot survive at surface pressures, and if they are brought to the surface they die because their proteins denature, their membranes rupture, and their metabolism fails. The barophiles are the opposite of surface organisms, and they are a reminder that pressure is not just a challenge, that it can be a requirement, that some organisms need the pressure to survive. The barophiles have pressure-adapted proteins, with amino acid sequences that maintain their structure and function under high pressure, and they have pressure-adapted membranes with lipids that remain fluid under pressure, and they have pressure-adapted metabolisms with enzymes that are optimized for high pressure. The barophiles are not rare. They are abundant in the Hadal zone, and they are essential to the ecosystem, decomposing organic matter, recycling nutrients, and they are a reminder that the Hadal zone is not just a place of extremes, that it is a place of life, of adaptation, of diversity, and the barophiles are the proof. Organic matter in the Hadal zone comes primarily from above, from the surface, in the form of marine snow, dead organisms, and wood that has fallen into the ocean. The organic matter sinks slowly, and much of it is consumed or decomposed before it reaches the Hadal zone, and what does reach the trenches is sparse, scattered, and it is the primary source of energy for the Hadal ecosystem. The organisms in the trenches are scavengers feeding on the organic matter, and they are efficient, consuming it quickly, extracting every bit of energy, and they can survive for long periods without food. The organic matter also includes large carcasses, whales, sharks, large fish, and when a carcass falls into a trench, it creates a feeding frenzy, and the amphipods, the snailfish, the bacteria swarm over it, consuming it, and the carcass can support the ecosystem for months or years, and it is a rare event, a windfall, and the organisms are adapted to take advantage of it. To consume as much as possible, to store the energy, to survive until the next carcass falls. The organic matter is the lifeline of the Hadal zone, and it is scarce, and the scarcity has shaped the evolution of the organisms, the adaptations, the strategies for survival. The Hadal zone is geologically active, and the trenches are sites of earthquakes, of volcanic activity, of tectonic movement, and the activity creates hydrothermal vents, cracks in the seafloor where hot, mineral-rich water flows out, and the vents support unique ecosystems based not on sunlight, but on chemosynthesis. where bacteria use the chemicals in the vent water to produce energy. The vents in the Hadal zone are rare and they are poorly studied, but they are there, and they support life that is independent of the surface, independent of the sun, and they are a reminder that life can find energy in many forms, in many places. The vents are hot, and the water is acidic, and it is rich in hydrogen sulfide, methane, and other chemicals. And the bacteria use these chemicals to produce energy, and the bacteria are the base of the food web, and they are consumed by tube worms, clams, mussels, and other organisms that live around the vents. The vents are oases in the Hadal zone, patches of high productivity in a region of scarcity, and they are a reminder that the Hadal zone is not uniform, that it has diversity, that it has regions of high activity and regions of low activity. And the vents are the high activity, the hotspots, the places where life is concentrated. The Hadal zone is a carbon sink, and it plays a role in the global carbon cycle, sequestering carbon that sinks from the surface and storing it in the sediments in the organisms in the trenches. The carbon is buried in the sediments, and it is removed from the carbon cycle for millions of years. And the burial is slow, but it is continuous, and it affects the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it affects the climate. The Hadal zone is also a site of carbon recycling, where bacteria decompose organic matter, releasing carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide dissolves in the water, and it is transported by currents, and it is part of the ocean's carbon cycle. The carbon cycle in the Hadal zone is complex, involving multiple pathways, multiple organisms, and it is not fully understood, and it is changing as the ocean warms, as the chemistry changes, as the organisms respond to the changes. The Hadal zone is not just a place of extremes, of darkness, of pressure. It is a place of global importance, a place that affects the climate, the carbon cycle, the functioning of the ocean, and it is a place that we are only beginning to understand. And the understanding is critical because the ocean is changing and the changes are accelerating. And the Hadal zone is part of the ocean, and it is part of the change. The Hadal zone is largely unexplored, and fewer people have visited the deepest trenches than have walked on the moon, and the exploration is difficult, expensive, and dangerous. The pressure is crushing, the darkness is absolute, and the technology required to reach the Hadal zone is sophisticated, specialized, and it is constantly being developed, improved, and refined. The submersibles that can reach the Hadal zone are rare, and the dives are brief, and the observations are limited, and much of what we know about the Hadal zone comes from remotely operated vehicles, from cameras, from sensors, from samples brought to the surface. The exploration is accelerating, and new technologies are being developed, and new discoveries are being made, and the Hadal zone is revealing its secrets, slowly, reluctantly, and the secrets are strange, beautiful, and they are changing our understanding of life, of the ocean, of the planet. The Hadal zone is the last frontier on Earth, the deepest, the darkest, the most extreme, and it is calling, and it is waiting, and it holds mysteries, wonders, and it is a reminder that the ocean is vast, that it is deep, and that we have barely begun to explore it, to understand it, to appreciate it. The Hadal zone is a place of extremes, of pressure, of cold, of darkness, of scarcity, and it is a place where life persists, where life adapts, where life thrives, and it is a reminder that life is resilient, that it is flexible, that it can colonize almost any environment, no matter how extreme, no matter how hostile, no matter how impossible it seems. The Hadal zone is not empty, it is full of life, but the life is sparse, scattered, and it is a life of patience, of efficiency, of adaptation, and it is a life that is unique, that is strange, that is beautiful. The trenches are the deepest scars on the earth, the places where the crust is broken, where the plates collide, where the planet is wounded, and the wounds are deep, and they are dark, and they are cold, and they are alive, and they are waiting, and they are calling. And they are a reminder that the ocean is not just the surface, that it has depth, that it has layers, that it has zones. And the hadal zone is the deepest, the darkest, the most extreme, and it is the final frontier, the last unexplored place on Earth. The pressure is absolute. The darkness is eternal. The cold is unrelenting. The ocean rests, silent and patient, at the bottom of the world. The ocean is not still. It is constantly moving, driven by wind, by the rotation of the Earth, by differences in temperature and salinity, and by the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun. The currents are the ocean's circulatory system, transporting heat, nutrients, and organisms across vast distances, and they regulate the climate, influence weather patterns, and shape ecosystems. The currents are invisible from the surface, but they are there, flowing, circulating, and they are the reason the ocean is connected, the reason a molecule of water in the Arctic can end up in the tropics, the reason the ocean is a single global system. The currents operate on multiple scales, from small eddies that last for days, to the global thermohaline circulation that takes centuries to complete a full cycle. The currents are layered, with surface currents driven by wind and deep currents driven by density differences, and the layers interact, exchange, and influence each other. The currents are the ocean's pulse, the heartbeat, and they are essential to the functioning of the ocean, to the distribution of life, to the regulation of the climate. And they are one of the most important features of the ocean, one of the things that makes it dynamic, alive, and interconnected. The Gulf Stream is one of the most powerful ocean currents, transporting warm water from the Gulf of Mexico along the eastern coast of North America and across the Atlantic to Europe. The Gulf Stream is driven by wind and by the rotation of the Earth, and it moves at speeds of up to 4 miles per hour, and it transports more water than all the rivers on Earth combined. The Gulf Stream is warm, and it warms the climate of Europe, making it milder than it would be otherwise. And without the Gulf Stream, Europe would be much colder, and the ecosystems would be different. The Gulf Stream is not a single narrow stream. It is a broad current, hundreds of miles wide, and it meanders, forming loops and eddies, and it is constantly changing, shifting, and the changes affect the climate, the weather, and the ecosystems. The Gulf Stream is blue, darker than the surrounding water, and it is warmer, and the boundary between the Gulf Stream and the surrounding water is sharp, visible, and it is called the Gulf Stream Front. And the front is a region of high productivity, where nutrients are upwelled, and phytoplankton bloom, and fish congregate. The Gulf Stream is one of the ocean's great rivers, and it is essential to the climate, to the ecosystems, and it is a reminder that the ocean is connected, that what happens in one place affects what happens in another. The thermohaline circulation is the global conveyor belt, a slow, deep current that circulates water throughout the world's oceans, driven by differences in temperature and salinity. The circulation begins in the North Atlantic, where cold, salty water sinks to the deep ocean, and the sinking water flows south along the bottom of the Atlantic, and it crosses into the Indian and Pacific Oceans, and it slowly rises, and it returns to the surface, and it flows back to the North Atlantic. And the cycle continues, and it takes about 1,000 years to complete one full circuit. The thermohaline circulation is critical to the climate because it transports heat from the tropics to the poles, and it regulates the distribution of heat, and it affects the temperature of the ocean, the atmosphere, and the land. The thermohaline circulation is also critical to the distribution of nutrients, because the deep water is rich in nutrients, and when it rises to the surface, it fertilizes the phytoplankton, and the phytoplankton bloom, and the ecosystems thrive. The thermohaline circulation is slow, invisible, but it is powerful, and it is one of the most important processes in the ocean, and it is changing, slowing as the ocean warms and the ice melts, and the changes are affecting the climate, and the consequences are not fully understood. Upwelling is the process by which deep, cold, nutrient-rich water rises to the surface, and it occurs in regions where surface water is pushed away by wind or currents, and the deep water rises to replace it. Upwelling is most common along the western coasts of continents, where the wind blows parallel to the coast, and the Coriolis effect pushes the surface water offshore, and the deep water rises. Upwelling regions are among the most productive ecosystems in the ocean, because the nutrients support massive blooms of phytoplankton, which support zooplankton, which support fish, and the fish support seabirds, marine mammals, and humans. The upwelling water is cold, and it cools the air, and it creates fog, and the fog is a characteristic feature of upwelling regions, and it is dense, persistent, and it blankets the coast. The upwelling water is also rich in carbon dioxide, and it is slightly acidic, and the acidity is increasing as the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and the increasing acidity is affecting the organisms, the ecosystems, and the productivity. Upwelling is essential to the ocean's productivity, to the fisheries, to the ecosystems, and it is driven by the wind. And the wind is changing, and the upwelling is changing, and the changes are affecting the ocean, the climate, and the life. The Coriolis effect is the deflection of moving objects caused by the rotation of the Earth, and it affects ocean currents, winds, and the movement of water. In the northern hemisphere, moving objects are deflected to the right, and in the southern hemisphere they are deflected to the left, and the deflection is proportional to the speed of the object and the latitude. The Coriolis effect is why ocean currents curve, why gyres rotate clockwise in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere, and why hurricanes spin in opposite directions in the two hemispheres. The Coriolis effect is not a force. It is an apparent deflection caused by the rotation of the Earth, and it is invisible, but it is measurable, and it is one of the most important factors shaping ocean currents, atmospheric circulation, and the distribution of heat and moisture around the planet. The Coriolis effect is strongest at the poles and weakest at the equator, and it is zero at the equator, and this is why hurricanes do not form at the equator, because the Coriolis effect is needed to start the rotation. The Coriolis effect is subtle, but it is powerful, and it is one of the fundamental forces shaping the ocean, the atmosphere, and the climate. Ocean gyres are large, circular current systems that dominate the surface circulation of the ocean, and there are 5 major gyres: the North Atlantic, the South Atlantic, the North Pacific, the South Pacific, and the Indian Ocean gyres. The gyres are driven by wind, by the Coriolis effect, and by the distribution of continents, and they rotate clockwise in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere. The gyres transport heat, nutrients, and organisms, and they shape the climate, the ecosystems, and the distribution of life. The center of each gyre is a region of low productivity, because the water is warm, nutrient poor, and the currents converge, and the convergence pushes the water downward, and the downward flow prevents the upwelling of nutrients. The center of the gyres is called the subtropical gyre, and it is blue, clear, and it is often called an ocean desert because the productivity is low and the life is sparse. The gyres are also where plastic and other debris accumulate, forming garbage patches, and the largest is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And the patch is not a solid island of trash, but a diffuse soup of microplastics, and the microplastics are ingested by organisms and they enter the food web, and they are a growing problem, a reminder that the ocean is connected, and what we put into it does not disappear. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current is the largest ocean current, and it flows around Antarctica, driven by the wind, and it is the only current that flows all the way around the globe, uninterrupted by continents. The Antarctic circumpolar current transports more water than any other current, and it connects the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific Oceans, and it plays a critical role in the global circulation, in the distribution of heat, and in the regulation of the climate. The current is cold, and it isolates Antarctica, keeping the warm water from the tropics away, and the isolation is one of the reasons Antarctica is so cold, so icy, and so different from the rest of the world. The Antarctic circumpolar current is also a region of high productivity, because the wind and the currents create upwelling, and the upwelling brings nutrients to the surface, and the phytoplankton bloom, and the blooms support krill, and the krill support whales, seals, penguins, and seabirds. The current is powerful, and it is fast, and it is one of the most important features of the Southern Ocean. And it is changing, shifting as the climate warms, and the changes are affecting the ecosystems, the ice, and the climate, and the consequences are not fully understood. Eddies are swirling masses of water that break off from currents, and they can be hundreds of miles across, and they can last for months or years, and they transport heat, nutrients, and organisms across the ocean. Eddies are common in regions where currents are strong and unstable, and they are formed when the current meanders, forming loops, and the loops pinch off, creating a rotating mass of water that moves independently of the current. Eddies can be warm or cold, depending on whether they formed from warm or cold water, and they can be cyclonic, rotating counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere, or anticyclonic, rotating clockwise. Eddies are important to the ocean's circulation because they transport heat and nutrients, and they mix the water, and they create regions of high productivity, where phytoplankton bloom and fish congregate. Eddies are also important to the distribution of organisms because they can transport larvae, eggs, and adults across vast distances, and they can connect populations that would otherwise be isolated. Eddies are invisible from the surface, but they can be detected by satellites by measuring the height of the sea surface, and they are constantly forming, moving, and dissipating, and they are one of the dynamic features of the ocean, one of the things that makes it constantly changing, constantly moving. Tides are the rise and fall of sea level caused by the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun, and they occur twice a day in most places, and the range varies from a few centimeters to more than 15 meters, depending on the location, the shape of the coastline, and the phase of the moon. Tides are predictable, and they have been used for navigation, for fishing, for timing activities for thousands of years, and they are one of the most visible manifestations of the ocean's connection to the moon, to the sun, to the cosmos. Tides create currents, called tidal currents, and the currents can be strong, especially in narrow channels and estuaries, and they transport nutrients, sediment, and organisms, and they shape the coastline, eroding cliffs, building beaches, and creating tidal flats. Tides are also important to the ecosystems because they create intertidal zones, regions that are alternately submerged and exposed, and the organisms in the intertidal zone are adapted to the changing conditions, to the wet and the dry, to the salt and the fresh, and they are among the most resilient organisms in the ocean. Tides are rhythmic, predictable, and they are one of the ocean's pulses, one of the things that makes it dynamic, alive, and connected to the larger universe. The ocean is warming, and the warming is affecting the currents, the circulation, and the distribution of heat. Warm water is less dense than cold water, and as the ocean warms, the density differences that drive the thermohaline circulation are weakening, and the circulation is slowing, and the slowing is affecting the climate, the weather, and the ecosystems. The warming is also affecting the wind patterns, and the wind drives the surface currents, and the changes in the wind are changing the currents, and the changes are affecting the upwelling, the productivity, and the distribution of life. The warming is not uniform, Some regions are warming faster than others, and the differential warming is creating new patterns of circulation, new currents, new eddies, and the changes are affecting the ecosystems, the fisheries, and the climate. The ocean is absorbing more than 90% of the excess heat from climate change, and the absorption is slowing the warming of the atmosphere. But it is changing the ocean, and the changes are accelerating, and the consequences are profound, and they are not fully understood. The ocean is warming, and the warming is changing the currents, and the currents are changing the ocean is changing the climate, and the climate is changing the world. The ocean's currents are the arteries and veins of the planet, transporting heat, nutrients, and life across vast distances, connecting the poles to the tropics, the surface to the deep, the past to the future. The currents are invisible, but they are powerful, and they are essential to the functioning of the ocean, to the regulation of the climate, to the distribution of life, and they are one of the most important features of the ocean, one of the things that makes it a single global system, one of the things that makes it alive. The currents are changing, shifting, slowing, and the changes are affecting the ocean, the climate, and the life. And the changes are accelerating, and the consequences are not fully understood, but they are profound, and they are global, and they are a reminder that the ocean is not separate from the atmosphere, from the land, from the climate, that it is part of the Earth system, and what happens in the ocean affects what happens everywhere else. And the ocean is changing, and the change is the pulse, the heartbeat, and the pulse is quickening. The currents flow, the water circulates. The ocean pulses, blue and patient, as it has for 4 billion years. The ocean has forests, but they are not made of trees. They are made of algae, of corals, of organisms that are rooted to the bottom, that reach toward the light, that create structure, habitat, and complexity. And they are among the most productive, most biodiverse ecosystems in the ocean. The undersea forests are found in shallow waters, where sunlight penetrates, and they are shaped by the currents, by the waves, by the organisms that live within them. And they are dynamic, constantly growing, constantly changing, constantly being grazed, broken, and renewed. The undersea forests are not silent. They are full of life, of movement, of sound, and they are essential to the ocean, to the coastlines, to the planet. The forests are ancient, and some of the corals are thousands of years old, and they have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the changing of climates, the shifting of continents, and they are still here, still growing, still building, and they are a reminder that the ocean is old, that it is memory, that it is continuity, and the forests are the keepers of that memory, the living archives of the ocean's history. Coral reefs are built by polyps, tiny animals related to jellyfish and anemones, and the polyps secrete calcium carbonate skeletons, and the skeletons accumulate over centuries and millennia, forming massive structures that can be seen from space. The reefs are found in warm, shallow, clear waters, and they are the most biodiverse ecosystems in the ocean, home to thousands of species of fish, invertebrates, and algae. The reefs are not just rock. They are living, growing, and they are symbiotic, the polyps hosting zooxanthellae, photosynthetic algae that provide the polyps with food in exchange for shelter and access to sunlight. The reefs are fragile, and they are sensitive to temperature, to pollution, to ocean acidification, and they are bleaching, dying, as the oceans warm and the chemistry changes. When the water is too warm, the polyps expel the zooxanthellae and the coral turns white, and without the algae, the polyps starve and the reef dies. The reefs are ancient, some of them thousands of years old, and they are disappearing, and the loss is not just ecological, but existential, a reminder that the ocean is changing, and the changes are accelerating, and the reefs cannot adapt fast enough, and the forests are falling silently beneath the waves. Kelp is a brown alga, and it is one of the fastest growing organisms on Earth, capable of growing up to 2 feet per day under optimal conditions. Kelp anchors to the rocky bottom with a holdfast, a root-like structure that grips the rock, and it rises through the water column, its fronds spreading at the surface, forming a dense canopy that provides habitat for fish, invertebrates, sea otters, and seals. Kelp forests are found in cold, nutrient-rich waters, and they are productive, photosynthesizing rapidly, and they support complex food webs. And they are nurseries for many commercially important fish species. Kelp forests are dynamic, growing and shrinking with the seasons, with the availability of nutrients, with the presence of herbivores like sea urchins, which can overgraze the kelp and create urchin barrens, barren stretches of rock where the kelp has been eaten and cannot regrow. The kelp forests are beautiful, swaying in the currents, and they are fragile, vulnerable to warming waters, to pollution, to the loss of predators like sea otters, which keep the urchin populations in check. The kelp is not a plant, it is an alga, and it is one of the fastest growing organisms on Earth, and it is essential to the coastal ecosystems where it grows. And it is a reminder that the ocean is productive, that it is dynamic, and that it is vulnerable. Zooxanthellae are single-celled algae that live inside coral polyps, and they are the reason corals can build reefs in nutrient-poor waters. The zooxanthellae photosynthesize using sunlight to produce glucose, and they share the glucose with the polyps, and the polyps use the glucose for energy, for growth, for reproduction. In exchange, the polyps provide the zooxanthellae with shelter, with access to sunlight, and with nutrients, and the relationship is symbiotic, mutually beneficial, and it is the foundation of the coral reef ecosystem. The zooxanthellae are sensitive to temperature, and when the water is too warm, the zooxanthellae produce toxic compounds, and the polyps expel them, and the coral bleaches, and without the zooxanthellae, the polyps starve, and the coral dies. The zooxanthellae are not just passengers, they are partners, and the partnership is ancient, dating back hundreds of millions of years, and it is the reason coral reefs exist, the reason they are so productive, so biodiverse. And the partnership is breaking down, and the reefs are dying, and the loss is profound, and it is a reminder that symbiosis is fragile, that it can be disrupted, and the disruption can be catastrophic. Sea otters are keystone species in kelp forests, and they play a critical role in maintaining the health of the ecosystem. Sea otters feed on sea urchins, and the urchins feed on kelp, and when the otters are present, they keep the urchin populations in check, and the kelp thrives, and the forest is healthy. When the otters are absent, the urchins multiply, and they overgraze the kelp, and the forest collapses, and the ecosystem shifts to an urchin barren, a barren stretch of rock where the kelp is gone, and the diversity is low. Sea otters were hunted to near extinction for their fur in the 18th and 19th centuries, and the kelp forests collapsed, and the ecosystems changed, and the loss was profound. The otters have been protected, and they are recovering in some areas, and the kelp forests are returning, and the ecosystems are healing, and the recovery is a reminder that keystone species are critical, that they shape the ecosystem, and that their loss can have cascading effects, and their recovery can restore the ecosystem, and the restoration is slow, but it is possible. And it is a reminder that the ocean is resilient, that it can heal if we give it the chance. Coral spawning is a synchronized event, and it occurs once a year, usually a few nights after a full moon, and the corals release eggs and sperm into the water, and the eggs and sperm meet, and fertilization occurs, and the larvae drift in the currents, and they settle on the reef, and they grow into new polyps, and the reef expands. The spawning is synchronized, timed to the moon, to the temperature, to the tides, and the synchronization is critical because it increases the chances of fertilization, and it overwhelms the predators, and the larvae have a better chance of survival. The spawning is brief, lasting only a few hours, and it is spectacular, and the water is filled with eggs and sperm, and it looks like an underwater snowstorm, and the event is one of the most remarkable phenomena in the ocean, and it is a reminder that the ocean is alive, that it reproduces, that it renews itself, and the renewal is synchronized, coordinated, and it is one of the ways the ocean maintains itself, one of the ways it persists, and the spawning is ancient, and it is still happening, and it is a reminder that the ocean has rhythms, cycles, and the cycles are tied to the moon, to the sun, to the cosmos. Mangroves are trees that grow in the intertidal zone, in the transition between land and sea, and they are adapted to the salt, to the tides, to the changing conditions. Mangroves have specialized roots that filter out the salt, and they have aerial roots that rise above the water, and the roots provide habitat for fish, crustaceans, and mollusks, and they stabilize the sediment, preventing erosion, and they protect the coastline from storms, from waves, from the rising sea. Mangroves are found in tropical and subtropical regions, and they are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. Mangroves are also carbon sinks, storing carbon in the sediment at rates higher than terrestrial forests, and they are nurseries for many commercially important fish species, and they are essential to the coastal ecosystems, to the fisheries, to the protection of the coastline. Mangroves are disappearing, cleared for coastal development, for aquaculture, for agriculture. And the loss is significant because the mangroves are not just trees, they are ecosystems, and they provide services that are valuable, essential. And the loss is accelerating, and the mangroves are one of the most threatened ecosystems in the ocean. And the loss is a reminder that the ocean is connected to the land, and what happens on land affects what happens in the ocean. Seagrass meadows are underwater grasslands, and they are found in shallow coastal waters, and they are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. The seagrasses are flowering plants, not algae, and they have roots, stems, and leaves, and they photosynthesize, producing oxygen and absorbing carbon dioxide. The meadows provide habitat for fish, crustaceans, sea turtles, and dugongs, and they stabilize the sediment, preventing erosion, and they filter the water, removing pollutants and excess nutrients, and they are carbon sinks, storing carbon in the sediment at rates higher than terrestrial forests. The seagrass meadows are disappearing, cleared for coastal development, damaged by boat propellers, smothered by sediment from runoff, and the loss is significant because the meadows are not just grass, they are ecosystems, and they provide services that are valuable, essential. And the loss is accelerating, and the seagrass meadows are one of the most threatened ecosystems in the ocean. The meadows sway in the currents, green and dense, and they are home to countless organisms, and they are one of the ocean's most important ecosystems. And they are vanishing, silently, beneath the waves, and the loss is a reminder that the ocean is fragile, that it is vulnerable, and that it needs protection. Coral bleaching is the expulsion of zooxanthellae from coral polyps, and it occurs when the water is too warm, when the corals are stressed, and the bleaching turns the coral white. And without the zooxanthellae, the polyps starve and the coral dies. Bleaching is becoming more frequent, more severe. As the ocean warms and the reefs are dying, and the loss is profound, because the reefs are the most biodiverse ecosystems in the ocean, and they support thousands of species, and they protect the coastlines, and they are nurseries for fish, and they are sources of food, of income, of beauty. The bleaching is not always fatal. If the water cools, the zooxanthellae can return, and the coral can recover, but the recovery is slow, and if the bleaching is severe, or if it is repeated, the coral dies, and the reef collapses, and the ecosystem shifts, and the loss is permanent. The bleaching is a symptom, a sign that the ocean is changing, that the temperature is rising, that the chemistry is changing, and the reefs are the canaries in the coal mine, the early warning system, and they are dying, and the dying is a message, a warning, and the warning is clear. The ocean is changing, and the changes are accelerating, and the reefs cannot adapt fast enough. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest coral reef system in the world, and it stretches for more than 1,400 miles along the coast of Australia, and it is visible from space, and it is home to thousands of species of fish, corals, mollusks, and other organisms. The Great Barrier Reef is ancient, and it has been growing for thousands of years, and it is one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it is one of the natural wonders of the world. The Great Barrier Reef is bleaching, dying as the ocean warms, and the bleaching events are becoming more frequent, more severe, and the reef is losing its colour, its diversity, its life, and the loss is profound. And it is a reminder that even the largest, the most iconic ecosystems are vulnerable, that they are not immune to the changes, and the changes are accelerating, and the reef is dying, and the dying is visible, measurable, and it is a tragedy, a loss not just for Australia but for the world. And the loss is a reminder that the ocean is changing, and the changes are real, and they are happening now. Undersea forests are three-dimensional, and they create structure, complexity, and they provide habitat for organisms that live on the surface, in the canopy, in the midwater, on the bottom, and the diversity is high, and the productivity is high, and the forests are essential to the ocean, to the coastlines, to the planet. The forests are not just collections of organisms, they are ecosystems, and they are interconnected, and they are dynamic, and they are constantly changing, constantly being shaped by the organisms, by the currents, by the waves, by the light. The forests are ancient, and they are fragile, and they are disappearing, and the loss is significant because the forests are not just beautiful, they are functional, and they provide services, carbon storage, coastal protection, nurseries for fish, habitat for biodiversity, and the services are valuable, essential, and the loss is accelerating, and the forests are one of the most threatened ecosystems in the ocean, and the loss is a reminder that the ocean is not infinite, that it is not invulnerable, and that it needs protection, and the protection is urgent, and the time is now. The forests sway, the corals build. The ocean grows blue and patient, as it has for 4 billion years. Light in the deep ocean does not come from the sun. It comes from the organisms themselves, from chemical reactions that produce cold light, light without heat, and the light is blue or green, the colours that travel farthest in seawater, and it is brief, flashing, pulsing, and it creates a world of signals, of communication, of deception, and of beauty. Bioluminescence is common in the ocean, and it is estimated that 90% of the organisms in the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones produce light, and they use the light for hunting, for defense, for communication, for camouflage. And the light is one of the most remarkable adaptations in the ocean. One of the ways organisms have solved the problem of living in the dark. The bioluminescence is not magic, it is chemistry, and it is one of the most efficient light sources known, converting nearly 100% of the chemical energy into light, with almost no heat, and the efficiency is far greater than any artificial light source. The bioluminescence is ancient, and it has evolved independently in many different groups of organisms, and the diversity of bioluminescent structures, of light-producing mechanisms, of uses of light is stunning, and it is a reminder that evolution is creative, that it finds solutions to problems, and the solutions are often beautiful, elegant, and effective. Luciferin and luciferase are the molecules that produce bioluminescence, and the reaction is simple. Luciferin is oxidized by luciferase in the presence of oxygen, and the reaction produces light. The luciferin is a small molecule, and it varies between different organisms, and the luciferase is an enzyme, and it catalyzes the reaction, and the light is produced, and the light is cold, and it is blue or green, and it is brief, lasting only a few seconds or minutes, and then the luciferin is depleted and the light stops. And the organism must produce more luciferin to produce more light. The luciferin-luciferase reaction is one of the most efficient chemical reactions known, and it is the basis of bioluminescence in most organisms, and the reaction is ancient, conserved across many different groups, and it is a reminder that the chemistry of life is universal, that the same molecules, the same reactions are used by organisms that are separated by millions of years of evolution, and the chemistry is elegant, efficient, and it is the foundation of one of the most beautiful phenomena in the ocean, the light in the dark, the bioluminescence. The anglerfish uses bioluminescence as a lure, and the lure is a modified dorsal fin that extends forward over the mouth, and at the tip of the fin is a bioluminescent organ. And the organ glows, and the glow attracts prey in the darkness, and the prey swims closer, drawn to the light, and when it is within reach, the anglerfish strikes, its mouth opening wide, its teeth locking around the prey, and the meal is swallowed whole. The lure is effective, and it is energy efficient, because the anglerfish does not have to chase the prey, it simply waits, and the lure does the work. The bioluminescence in the lure is produced by bacteria, symbiotic bacteria that live inside the lure, and the bacteria produce the light, and the anglerfish provides the bacteria with nutrients, and the relationship is symbiotic, mutually beneficial, and it is one of the many examples of symbiosis in the ocean, of organisms working together, of partnerships that are ancient, effective, and essential. The anglerfish is patient, and it waits, motionless, and the lure glows, and the light is the only light in the darkness, and the prey is drawn to it, and the anglerfish feeds, and the strategy is simple, elegant, and it is one of the most iconic examples of bioluminescence in the ocean. Counterillumination is a form of camouflage that uses bioluminescence to match the faint light coming from above, and it makes the organism invisible to predators looking up from below. The organism has photophores on its ventral surface, and the photophores produce light, and the light is carefully controlled, adjusted to match the intensity and color of the downwelling light, and the organism becomes a shadow, a silhouette that blends into the background, and it is nearly impossible to see. Counterillumination is used by fish, squid, and crustaceans, and it is one of the most sophisticated forms of camouflage in the ocean. The counterillumination requires precise control of the light, and the organisms have sensors that detect the ambient light levels, and they adjust the intensity of the photophores continuously, automatically, and the adjustment is so precise that the organism is nearly invisible, even to predators with excellent vision. The counterillumination is a solution to the problem of being visible in the twilight zone, where there is just enough light to see by, and it is a reminder that camouflage is not just about color and pattern, that it can involve light, and the light can be controlled, and the control can be the difference between life and death. And the counterillumination is one of the most elegant adaptations in the ocean. The firefly squid is a small squid found in the waters off Japan, and it is famous for its bioluminescence. The firefly squid has thousands of photophores on its body, and the photophores produce blue light, and the squid can control the light, flashing patterns, creating displays, and the displays are used for communication, for attracting mates, for confusing predators. The firefly squid migrates vertically, rising to the surface at night to feed, and descending to deeper waters during the day. And during the migration, the squid flash, and the flashing creates a spectacle, a light show in the darkness. The firefly squid is also bioluminescent in its eggs, and the eggs glow, and the glow may deter predators, or it may attract prey, and the function is not fully understood, but the glow is beautiful, and it is a reminder that bioluminescence is not just for adults, that it can be used at all stages of life, and the uses are diverse, and the diversity is a testament to the power of evolution, to the creativity of life. And the firefly squid is one of the most beautiful examples of bioluminescence in the ocean, and it is a reminder that the ocean is full of light, even in the darkness. Dinoflagellates are single-celled organisms, and some species are bioluminescent, and they produce light when they are disturbed, when the water is agitated, and the light is blue, and it is brief, flashing, and it creates a phenomenon called bioluminescent bays, where the water glows when it is disturbed, when a boat passes, when a fish swims, when a hand is dipped into the water. The bioluminescent bays are found in tropical and subtropical regions, and they are rare, and they are beautiful, and they are a reminder that bioluminescence is not just in the deep ocean, that it is also in the surface waters, and it is visible, and it is accessible. The dinoflagellates produce light as a defense, and the light startles predators, and it may also attract larger predators that eat the predators of the dinoflagellates. And the strategy is called the burglar alarm hypothesis, and it is one of the ways bioluminescence is used for defense. The dinoflagellates are abundant, and they are found in all the world's oceans, and they are essential to the ocean's food web. And they are also responsible for harmful algal blooms, red tides, and the blooms can produce toxins that kill fish and shellfish, and the toxins can accumulate in the food web. And the dinoflagellates are a reminder that the ocean is complex, that organisms can be beneficial and harmful, and the line between the two is not always clear. The vampire squid is not a squid, and it is not a vampire, and it is a cephalopod, related to squid and octopuses, and it lives in the oxygen minimum zone, where oxygen levels are extremely low, and it is adapted to the low oxygen, to the darkness, to the pressure. The vampire squid has large eyes, the largest eyes relative to body size of any animal, and the eyes are adapted to detect the faint bioluminescence of prey and predators. The vampire squid has bioluminescent photophores on its body, and it can produce light, and it uses the light for defense, flashing and then releasing a cloud of bioluminescent mucus, and the cloud confuses predators, and the squid escapes. The vampire squid is not a predator. It is a scavenger, feeding on marine snow, on dead organisms, on fecal pellets, and it uses long filaments to capture the particles, and it brings them to its mouth, and it consumes them. And the strategy is energy efficient, and it is well suited to the low oxygen, low food environment of the oxygen minimum zone. The vampire squid is strange, beautiful, and it is one of the most unusual organisms in the ocean. And it is a reminder that the ocean is full of diversity, of organisms that are adapted to extreme conditions. And the adaptations are often bizarre, elegant, and effective, and the vampire squid is one of the most remarkable examples. Photophores are light-producing organs, and they are found in many bioluminescent organisms, and they vary in complexity from simple clusters of light-producing cells to complex organs with lenses, reflectors, filters, and shutters. The photophores can be controlled, turned on and off, and the intensity can be adjusted, and the color can be changed, and the control is precise, and it allows the organism to produce specific patterns of light, specific signals, and the signals are used for communication, for hunting, for defense, for camouflage. The photophores are diverse, and they have evolved independently in many different groups of organisms, and the diversity is a testament to the power of evolution, to the creativity of life. And the photophores are one of the most remarkable structures in the ocean, and they are a reminder that light is not just from the sun, that it can be produced by organisms, and the light can be controlled, and the control can be used for many purposes, and the purposes are diverse, and the diversity is one of the things that makes the ocean so rich, so complex, so beautiful. And the photophores are the tools, the organs, the structures that produce the light, and the light is the signal, the message, the communication in the darkness. Bioluminescent bacteria are found in many marine organisms, and they live in symbiotic relationships, producing light in exchange for nutrients. And the bacteria are found in the lures of anglerfish, in the light organs of squid, in the photophores of fish. And the bacteria are essential to the bioluminescence of the host, and the host is essential to the survival of the bacteria, and the relationship is ancient, mutually beneficial, and it is one of the many examples of symbiosis in the ocean. The bacteria produce light continuously, and the host controls the light by covering and uncovering the light organ, by adjusting the blood flow to the organ, by regulating the oxygen supply, and the control is precise, and it allows the host to produce specific patterns of light, specific signals, and the signals are used for communication, for hunting, for defense. The bacteria are small, and they are abundant, and they are found in many different organisms, and they are a reminder that symbiosis is common in the ocean, that organisms work together, that partnerships are essential, and the partnerships are ancient, and they are one of the foundations of life in the ocean, and the bioluminescent bacteria are one of the most important partners, one of the most essential symbionts. The deep-sea dragonfish has bioluminescent photophores along its body, and it also has a bioluminescent barbel, a long, thin filament that extends from its chin, and the barbel glows, and the glow attracts prey, and the prey swims closer, and the dragonfish strikes its large teeth impaling the prey, and the meal is swallowed. The dragonfish also has red bioluminescence, which is rare in the ocean, and the red light is invisible to most organisms because most organisms cannot see red light, and the dragonfish uses the red light as a searchlight, illuminating prey without being seen, and the strategy is effective, and it is one of the most sophisticated uses of bioluminescence in the ocean. The dragonfish is black, and it is nearly invisible in the darkness, and the only light is the bioluminescence, and the bioluminescence is controlled, and it is used strategically, and the dragonfish is a predator, and it is effective, and it is one of the many predators of the deep ocean. And it is a reminder that the deep is not peaceful, that it is a place of predation, of competition, of survival, and the organisms are adapted to the challenges, and they are effective, efficient, and they are survivors. And the dragonfish is one of the most remarkable, one of the most beautiful, and one of the most deadly. Bioluminescence is used for communication, and the organisms produce specific patterns of light, specific flashes, specific colors, and the patterns are species-specific, and they convey information about identity, about readiness to mate, about territory. And the communication is silent, visual, and it is effective in the darkness, where sound does not travel well, where smell is diffuse, and where light is the most effective way to communicate. The communication is brief, flashing, and it is a language, a code, and the code is understood by the organisms, and it is used to coordinate behavior, to find mates, to avoid predators, to establish territory. The communication is not just between individuals, it is also between species, and some organisms mimic the bioluminescent signals of other species, and they use the mimicry to attract prey, to avoid predators, to deceive, and the deception is effective, and it is one of the many strategies organisms use to survive, to reproduce, to thrive in the ocean. The bioluminescence is not just light, it is communication, and the communication is complex, diverse, and it is one of the most important uses of bioluminescence in the ocean. And it is a reminder that the ocean is not silent, that it is full of signals, of messages, of communication. And the communication is happening now in the darkness, in the deep, and it is invisible to us, but it is there, and it is essential. The ocean glows, the darkness is not empty. It is full of light, of signals, of ghosts that flash and fade, and the light is cold, and it is blue, and it is beautiful, and it is one of the most remarkable phenomena in the ocean, one of the things that makes the deep ocean so strange, so alien, so wonderful. The bioluminescence is ancient, and it is diverse, and it is essential, and it is a reminder that light does not always come from the sun, that life can create its own light, and the light can be used, controlled, and it can be beautiful. And the beauty is not for us, it is for the organisms, for the survival, for the communication, for the life in the darkness. The lights flash, the ghosts dance. The ocean glows blue and patient, as it has for 4 billion years. The ocean is not silent. It is full of sound, of clicks, of whistles, of songs, of the grinding of ice, of the rumble of earthquakes, of the hum of ships. And the sound travels far farther than light, farther than smell, and it is the primary way many marine organisms communicate, navigate, and hunt. Sound travels through water at about 1,500 meters per second, nearly 5 times faster than it travels through air, and it travels farther, and it is absorbed less, and it is the reason whales can communicate across entire ocean basins, the reason dolphins can echolocate in murky water, the reason the ocean is alive with sound even when it appears silent to us. The sound in the ocean is layered, with different frequencies traveling different distances, with different sources creating different sounds, and the soundscape is complex, dynamic, and it is constantly changing, constantly being shaped by the organisms, by the weather, by the geology, by the human activity. The ocean is not silent. It is acoustic, and the acoustics are essential to the life, to the communication, to the survival of the organisms, and the sound is one of the most important features of the ocean, one of the things that makes it alive, connected, and it is a reminder that silence is not the absence of sound, that silence is a quality, a texture, and the ocean has its own silence, its own acoustic signature, and the signature is ancient, and it is changing. Whale songs are complex vocalizations produced by male humpback whales, and the songs are long, lasting up to 20 minutes, and they are repeated, and the repetition can continue for hours or days. The songs are structured with phrases, themes, and patterns, and the structure is similar to human music. And the songs change over time, evolving, and all the males in a population sing the same song, and the song changes gradually, and the changes are adopted by all the males. And the mechanism of transmission is not fully understood, but it is cultural, learned, and it is one of the few examples of culture in non-human animals. The songs are thought to be used for attracting mates, for establishing territory, for communication, and the function is not fully understood, but the songs are beautiful, haunting, and they travel for hundreds of miles through the ocean, and they are one of the most remarkable phenomena in the ocean. One of the things that reminds us that the ocean is not just a physical space, that it is also an acoustic space, a space of communication, of culture, of beauty. The whale songs are ancient, and they are still being sung, and they are a reminder that the ocean is alive, that it has voice, and the voice is powerful, and it is beautiful, and it is worth listening to. Echolocation is the use of sound to navigate and hunt, and it is used by dolphins, porpoises, and toothed whales. The animals produce clicks, high-frequency sounds, and the clicks travel through the water, and they bounce off objects, and the echoes return to the animal, and the animal listens to the echoes, and it interprets the echoes, and it can determine the size, shape, distance, and even the internal structure of the object. The echolocation is precise, and the animals can detect objects as small as a coin, and they can distinguish between different species of fish, between healthy and sick individuals. The echolocation is produced by structures in the head, and the clicks are focused into a beam, and the beam is directed forward, and the animal can scan the environment, and it can build a mental image of the surroundings, and the image is acoustic, not visual, and it is a different way of perceiving the world. And it is effective, and it is one of the most sophisticated sensory systems in the animal kingdom. The echolocation is essential to the animals because they often hunt in murky water, in darkness where vision is limited, and the echolocation allows them to hunt, to navigate, to survive, and it is a reminder that the senses are diverse. The perception is not just visual, and the ocean is full of organisms that perceive the world in ways that are alien to us. The SOFAR channel, the sound fixing and ranging channel, is a layer in the ocean where sound travels the farthest, and it is located at a depth where the temperature and pressure create conditions that minimize the absorption of sound. The SOFAR channel is typically at a depth of about 1,000 meters, and sound in the SOFAR channel can travel for thousands of miles, and it is the reason whales can communicate across entire ocean basins, and it is the reason underwater explosions can be detected on the other side of the world. The SOFAR channel is a natural waveguide, and the sound is trapped in the channel, and it travels horizontally, and it does not escape to the surface or to the deep. And the channel is used by whales, by submarines, by scientists, and it is one of the most important acoustic features of the ocean. The SOFAR channel is invisible, but it is there, and it is a highway for sound, a conduit for communication, and it is a reminder that the ocean is not uniform, that it has structure, layers, zones, and the structure affects the sound, the communication, the life. And the SOFAR channel is one of the most important structures, one of the things that makes the ocean connected, acoustic, and alive. Snapping shrimp are small crustaceans, and they produce one of the loudest sounds in the ocean, a snap that can reach over 200 decibels, louder than a gunshot. The snap is produced by a specialized claw, and the claw closes rapidly, and the rapid closure creates a cavitation bubble, a bubble of water vapor, and the bubble collapses, and the collapse produces a shock wave, a sound, and the sound is loud, brief, and it is used to stun prey, to communicate, to defend territory. The snapping shrimp are abundant, and they are found in shallow waters, and the collective snapping of millions of shrimp creates a crackling sound, a background noise that is characteristic of tropical reefs. The snapping is so loud that it interferes with sonar, with underwater communication, and it is a reminder that the ocean is noisy, that it is full of sound, and the sound is not just from large animals, from whales and dolphins, but also from small animals, from shrimp, from fish, from invertebrates. And the sound is diverse, and it is constant, and it is one of the defining characteristics of the ocean, one of the things that makes it alive, dynamic. And it is a reminder that size is not always correlated with impact, that small organisms can have large effects, and the snapping shrimp are one of the most remarkable examples. Fish produce sound by vibrating their swim bladders, by grinding their teeth, by rubbing their bones together, and the sounds are used for communication, for attracting mates, for defending territory, for coordinating behavior. The sounds are diverse, ranging from grunts to croaks to drumming, and each species has its own acoustic signature, its own sound, and the sound is used to identify the species, to locate individuals, to communicate in the darkness, in the murky water, where vision is limited. The fish sounds are often low frequency, and they travel well through water, and they are part of the ocean's soundscape, part of the acoustic environment. The fish sounds are not as well studied as whale songs or dolphin echolocation, but they are important, and they are diverse, and they are a reminder that the ocean is full of sound, that communication is not just visual, that it is also acoustic, and the acoustic communication is ancient, and it is essential, and it is one of the ways organisms interact, coordinate, and survive. The fish are not silent, they are vocal, and they are part of the ocean's chorus, part of the symphony. And the symphony is complex, layered, and it is constantly playing, and it is one of the most remarkable features of the ocean, one of the things that makes it alive. Noise pollution is increasing in the ocean, and the noise comes from ships, from sonar, from seismic surveys, from construction. And the noise is loud, and it travels far, and it interferes with the communication, the navigation, the hunting of marine organisms. The noise is especially harmful to whales and dolphins, which rely on sound for communication, for echolocation, for finding mates. And the noise can mask their calls, can interfere with their echolocation, can cause stress, can cause strandings, and the noise is a growing problem. And it is one of the many ways human activity is affecting the ocean. The noise pollution is invisible, but it is measurable, and it is increasing, and the increase is correlated with the increase in shipping, in industrial activity, and human presence in the ocean. And the noise is a reminder that the ocean is not separate from human activity, that what we do on land, what we do on the surface, affects what happens in the ocean, and the effects are profound, and they are accelerating, and the noise is one of the effects, one of the impacts, and it is a reminder that the ocean is fragile, that it is vulnerable, and that it needs protection. And the protection includes reducing the noise, respecting the acoustic environment, and allowing the organisms to communicate, to navigate, to survive. The ocean has natural sounds, sounds that are not produced by organisms, and the sounds include the rumble of earthquakes, the grinding of ice, the crash of waves, the patter of rain. And the sounds are part of the ocean's soundscape, part of the acoustic environment. And they are ancient, and they have been part of the ocean for billions of years. The earthquakes produce low-frequency sounds, and the sounds travel for thousands of miles, and they can be detected by hydrophones, by listening devices, and the sounds are used to study the Earth's interior, to monitor seismic activity, to understand the geology of the ocean floor. The ice produces sounds when it cracks, when it calves, when icebergs break off glaciers. And the sounds are loud, and they are characteristic of the polar regions, and they are changing, increasing, as the ice melts, as the glaciers retreat. And the increase is a reminder that the ocean is changing, that the climate is changing, and the sounds are the evidence, the acoustic signature of the change. The natural sounds are part of the ocean's identity, part of its character, and they are ancient, and they are changing, and the changes are measurable, and they are a reminder that the ocean is dynamic, that it is alive, and that it is responding to the changes, and the response is acoustic, measurable, and it is happening now. Silence in the ocean is not the absence of sound. It is a quality, a texture, and it is found in the deep, in the abyss, where the sounds are sparse, where the organisms are few, where the acoustic environment is quiet but not silent. The silence is broken by the occasional click of a shrimp, by the call of a whale, by the rumble of an earthquake. And the sounds are brief, and they are swallowed by the vastness, by the depth, by the water, and the silence returns, and the silence is profound, and it is one of the most remarkable qualities of the deep ocean, one of the things that makes it different from the surface, from the land, from the human world. The silence is not empty. It is full of potential, of waiting, of the possibility of sound, and the silence is a reminder that the ocean is vast, that it is deep, that it is mostly unexplored, and the unexplored regions are quiet, and the quiet is not the absence of life, it is the presence of space, of depth, of the unknown. And the silence is one of the most powerful qualities of the ocean, one of the things that makes it mysterious, that makes it compelling. And the silence is calling, and it is waiting, and it is a reminder that the ocean is not just sound, it is also silence. And the silence is as important as the sound. The ocean is acoustic, and the acoustics are essential to the life, to the communication, to the survival of the organisms. And the acoustics are changing, and the changes are profound, and they are accelerating, and the changes are caused by human activity, by noise pollution, by climate change, by the warming of the ocean, by the melting of the ice. And the changes are affecting the organisms, the ecosystems, the ocean, and the changes are measurable, and they are a reminder that the ocean is not separate from human activity, that what we do affects the ocean, and the ocean is responding, and the response is acoustic, and it is visible, and it is happening now. The ocean is not silent, it is full of sound, of communication, of life, and the sound is ancient, and it is changing, and the changes are a reminder that the ocean is dynamic, that it is alive, and that it is vulnerable, and it needs protection, and the protection includes respecting the acoustic environment, reducing the noise, allowing the organisms to communicate, to navigate, to survive, and the protection is urgent, and the time is now, and the ocean is calling, and it is waiting, and it is asking us to listen, to hear, to understand, and to act. The ocean sings, the whales call, the silence listens, blue and patient, as it has for 4 billion years. The ocean is not merely water, it is a 4 billion-year-old memory of the stars, and tonight it has pulled you into its silent, salt-heavy embrace, and you have descended through the layers, through the light, through the twilight, through the darkness, through the abyss, through the trenches, and you've seen the currents, the forests, the ghosts, and you've heard the songs, and you have felt the silence, and you've touched the deep, and the deep has touched you, and you are part of it now, part of the ocean, part of the memory, part of the 4 billion-year-old story. And the story continues, and the ocean waits, and the ocean remembers, and the ocean is calling you back always to the salt, to the blue, to the silence, to the deep.